My sister looked at me across our parents' dining room table and said, they wanted me to have it. It was the house where we grew up. The house I'd been living in for the past 5 years while I took care of our parents. The house she'd visited maybe twice a year, and she was telling me they wanted her to have it. This was 3 days after our father's funeral. Our mother had died 8 months earlier. I was 42 years old, exhausted, and trying to figure out how to grieve while my sister sat across from me with a lawyer and a will I'd never seen before. A will that left everything to her. I didn't argue that day. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just nodded, said okay, and left because I knew something she didn't. I had the original will, the one our parents signed 12 years ago, the one that had a clause she'd completely forgotten about. And 6 weeks later, when we went to probate court, I brought it with me. This is that story. Let me give you context. I'm the younger sibling. My sister, let's call her Karen, is 3 years older than me. We grew up in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. Middle-class family. My dad worked in sales. My mom was a teacher. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. When I was in my 20s, I moved away for work. Karen stayed closer to home, got married, had 2 kids. She was the successful one, the one who had it together. I was single, no kids. Career never really took off the way I'd hoped. And when I was 37, I lost my job. I was living in a studio apartment 2 states away, trying to figure out what to do next, when my dad called me. He said, "Your mother's sick, Alzheimer's, early onset." She was 63. My dad was 66 and still working. He couldn't retire yet. They needed his income and his health insurance. But my mom needed care, full-time care. My dad asked me if I could move home for a while, just to help out. He'd pay me what he could. I could stay in my old room. It wouldn't be forever, just until they figured something out. I said yes, because what else was I going to say? She was my mother. So I packed up my studio, broke my lease, and moved back into my childhood bedroom at 37 years old. And I took care of my mom. I fed her, I bathed her, I made sure she took her medication. I sat with her when she didn't recognize me. I held her hand when she asked where her mother was, her mother who'd been dead for 20 years. And my dad went to work every day so we could afford her medication. Karen visited on Thanksgiving and Christmas. She'd bring her kids, stay for a few hours, tell me I was doing such a great job, and then she'd leave. Back to her house, her husband, her life. I stayed. My mom lived with Alzheimer's for 4 years. In the beginning, she still had good days. Days where she'd recognize me. Days where we could sit on the porch and talk about old memories. But those days got fewer. By year 3, she didn't know who I was most of the time. By year 4, she couldn't walk, couldn't feed herself, couldn't speak, and I was there for all of it. My dad tried to help when he got home from work, but he was 70 by then, tired, worn out. We talked about putting her in a facility, but the good ones cost more than we could afford, and the affordable ones, I couldn't do that to her. So I stayed. I gave up 5 years of my life, 5 years where I didn't have a career, didn't date, didn't build anything for myself. I just took care of my mom. And Karen sent a card on Mother's Day. My mom died in March 2019, at home, in her bed. I was holding her hand. Karen didn't make it in time. 8 months later, my dad had a heart attack, massive, no warning. He was 71. I found him in the living room when I came back from the grocery store. The paramedic said he was already gone, and just like that, I'd lost both of them. Karen flew in the next day, and 3 days after the funeral, she sat me down with her lawyer and told me about the will. The will she brought was dated 6 months before my dad died. It was typed, notarized, signed by both my parents. It said, "We leave our home and all assets to our daughter, Karen." That was it. No mention of me. Karen's lawyer, some guy in a cheap suit who looked like he specialized in small estate cases, slid the document across the table and said, "This is pretty straightforward. The house goes to Karen. Any personal items can be divided amicably." I stared at the paper, and I asked Karen, "Did you know about this?" She nodded. Mom and Dad talked to me about it last year. They wanted to make sure everything was clear. no fighting, no confusion. I said, I've been living here for 5 years. I took care of them. You visited twice a year. She looked at me like I was being unreasonable. I know, and we appreciate everything you did, but this is what they wanted. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just asked, when do you need me out? She said, end of the month would be great, 3 weeks. I had 3 weeks to pack up 5 years of my life and find somewhere else to go. I said, okay, and I left. But here's the thing, I didn't believe her. Not because I thought she was lying about the will, but because I knew my parents, and I knew they wouldn't have done that to me. So that night, I went through my dad's filing cabinet, the one in the basement, the one where he kept every important document he'd ever signed. Tax returns from 1987, our birth certificates, the deed to the house, the mortgage payoff letter, and a manila folder labeled Estate Planning 2008. I opened it, and there it was, the original will. The will from 2008 was clear. It split everything 50-50, half to Karen, half to me. But there was a clause on page 3. I'll read it to you exactly. In the event that one child provides primary care for either parent during a period of extended illness or incapacity, that child shall receive the family home and all real property. The remaining assets shall be divided equally between both children. Primary care, extended illness. I'd provided primary care for my mother for 4 years. I'd lived with my father for 5. The house was mine. According to the will my parents signed 12 years ago, but Karen had a newer will, one that erased me completely. I sat in that basement for 2 hours trying to figure out what happened. And then I remembered something. 6 months before my dad died, Karen had visited, just her. No husband, no kids. She said she wanted to spend time with Dad. She stayed for 3 days. And when she left, my dad seemed off, quieter than usual, distracted. I asked him if everything was okay. He said, Karen's worried about the future, about what happens to the house when I'm gone. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now I understood. She'd convinced him to change the will. Maybe she told him it would be easier. No arguments, no confusion. Maybe she told him I didn't need the house because I was already living there. Maybe she told him she had kids to think about, a family. I don't know what she said, but I know my dad was 70 years old, grieving my mom, and exhausted, and she saw an opportunity. So she took it. But here's what she didn't know. The 2008 will was still valid. And in most states, when there are 2 wills, the court looks at which one reflects the true intent of the deceased. And if there's a clause about caregiving and one child actually provided that care, the older will can override the newer one. I called a lawyer the next morning. The probate hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. In the meantime, Karen moved forward like the house was already hers. She hired a real estate agent. She started clearing out rooms. She sold my mom's jewelry. She changed the locks. I was staying with a friend by then. All my stuff was in storage, and Karen was treating our childhood home like a garage sale. I didn't say anything. I just let her keep going. The day of the probate hearing, I showed up with my lawyer and the original will. Karen was there with her lawyer. She looked confident. Her lawyer presented the 2020 will, explained that it was clear and unambiguous, said there was no reason to contest it, and then my lawyer stood up. He presented the 2008 will. He explained the caregiving clause. He submitted a sworn affidavit from my dad's doctor confirming that I had been the primary caregiver for both parents. He submitted bank records showing that I'd been living at the house for 5 years. He submitted testimony from neighbors who confirmed I was there every single day. Karen's face went white. Her lawyer tried to argue that the newer will superseded the old one. But the judge asked one question. Did the 2020 will explicitly revoke the caregiving clause? Karen's lawyer checked. It didn't. The judge ruled in my favor. The house was mine. Karen didn't say a word to me. She just got up and walked out. Her lawyer stayed behind to handle the paperwork. And 2 weeks later, I got the deed. Karen and I haven't spoken since. She tried to appeal the ruling. It was denied. She threatened to sue me for elder abuse, claiming I manipulated our parents. Her lawyer told her she didn't have a case. And then she just disappeared from my life. No calls, No emails, nothing. I heard through a cousin that she told people I stole the house from her, that I tricked our parents, that I took advantage of them. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so ugly. I still live in the house. It's paid off. My parents took care of that years ago. I fixed up my old room, painted the living room, planted a garden in the back, and sometimes I sit on the porch where I used to sit with my mom and I think about how different things could have been if Karen had helped, if she'd visited more, if she'd cared about anything other than the house. But she didn't. And that's the thing I want you to understand. She didn't lose the house because I was smarter. She lost it because she wasn't there. Because when our parents needed someone, I showed up. And she showed up when there was something to inherit. The law saw that. The judge saw that. And no matter how many times she rewrote the will, she couldn't rewrite 5 years of me being the one who stayed. People ask me sometimes if I feel guilty, if I feel bad that my sister got nothing. And the answer is no, I don't. Because here's what I learned. Inheritance isn't just about what's written on paper. It's about what you did when it mattered. Karen wanted the reward without putting in the work. She wanted the house without the sacrifice. She wanted to be honored as a daughter without actually being there. And when you try to claim something you didn't earn, eventually the truth catches up. The original will didn't save me because it was older. It saved me because it reflected what actually happened. I was the primary caregiver. I gave up 5 years. I stayed when it was hard. And the house didn't go to me because I had a better lawyer. It went to me because I earned it. So if you're in a situation where someone is trying to take something from you, inheritance, property, money, something you sacrificed for, don't assume the newest document wins. Look for the original agreements. Look for clauses about caregiving, contribution, and time. Look for proof of what you actually did. Because courts don't just care about signatures. They care about intent. They care about fairness. And if you were the one who showed up, the law will see that. You just have to be willing to fight for it. I'm 47 now. I still live in my parents' house. I think about them every day, and I know they'd be proud that I fought for this. Not because of the house, but because I didn't let someone rewrite the story of what I did for them. Karen can tell people whatever she wants. I know the truth. The court knows the truth. And the house is mine. This is glass floor. If someone's trying to take what you earned, don't back down. Find the document, build the case, and let the truth do the work.